All right, hey everybody. Thanks for tuning in for the Sunday Simply Test development stream, the beta bug smash as we get ready to launch the new version of Simply Test Me. For those who may not have been following along, this is the original or slash current Simply Test Me site. It's a Drupal 7 site that lets you test Drupal projects. We're working on a new version that's built on Drupal 9 and is at beta.simplytest.me. And we'll be working through a really cool issue today where with the original site, you can craft a URL that launches an instance automatically. So you take several query parameters, point it at an endpoint or a page, and it will launch a site for you. Here's a quick example using the Dreditor Chrome extension or browser extension, because it's not just Chrome. Whenever there's a .patch file, which is the, let's say, most common and quote-unquote legacy way of contributing to Drupal, we now have merge requests, but whenever it sees a patch file, it actually links to simplytest.me to be able to test it. And if I copy this link and let's paste it here, you'll see that it's to simplytestme/project/Drupal. That's the project, the branch, and then an array of patches to apply. So today we're going to be porting and making sure that's available in the new version. Good morning, Adam. Good morning, anybody else that's tuning in. But before I begin, I do want to talk about the sponsors of Tugboat that make all of this possible and ensure that this vital community project stays running. Tugboat is the provider of all of our sandbox environments, and they're the fastest platform to automate the creation of preview and test environments. If you're curious, you can go back to my previous videos. I did a hack and play showing off how to use Tugboat in your projects just 2 days ago. Amazy.io is hosting the newest version of Simply Test Me, so a modern platform as a service host. Managed with their Lagoon cloud hosting. We really like Amazy because Lagoon is their hosting platform. It's also an open source Kubernetes environment. And then thanks to our development partners, QED42 has been providing tons of time and effort into the front end theming for the new site, which is greatly appreciated. And then my own company, Bluehorn Digital, I have been building the backend for the new simplytest.me version and also putting on all these live streams on Sundays. If you are curious about the partner program, what that means, on Adam's website, there is a Simply Test Me Partners Program announcement. And thanks to our sponsors on Open Collective, Centauro, and previously the Drupal Association, and give recognition to Maloon and Druid, who were the long-standing infrastructure providers of Simply Test Me from the beginning and only until recently as we've started to move on to newer infrastructure. So Simply Test Me wouldn't have been possible without all these folks' help. You can become a sponsor on Open Collective, and also a gracious thank you to any of our individual contributors or Drupal camps which have contrib sponsor tiers and then take some of that money and give it to simplytest.me. All right, so let's get started on this. To get the custom install via URL parameters. Okay, I've got my Docker running. I should probably get the environment running. And we'll get started. So right now, oh, there's a new DDev update. So right now when we go to a site or on our page, wait for all this to load, we have this launch module, and inside of here, there's a payload that's accepted. So launch project takes the request, and then it decodes the request and validates that submission into matching our launch schema. So what we kind of need to do is allow supporting it being crafted via query parameters, or maybe a simplified version of it for query parameters. And we need to support backwards compatibility. Note, we should support backwards compatibility with existing URLs. For example, folks using Dreditor still. Let's let Grammarly fix my issues there. By the way, like side plug, if you don't use Grammarly. It is probably the best thing I've ever paid for. I've been using it for a long time. Like, I remember just when Grammarly first started, and it was like the plagiarism checker, like in high school, that we had to use, and I hated it. But ever since they turned into this, like, they make you write better, down, love it. All right, so I want to make sure this is backwards compatible, because we're gonna have a lot of users that still click this button, and when the new site hits, they're gonna get a 404, or something's gonna break. So I think the first step is to match the backwards compatibility part of it, and then figure out how to make it more robust. So we're going to take this really basic example of launching Drupal core, and with a patch. So I'm going to actually just copy this link address, and let's create a new HTTP request file. I'm going to add it as a comment, so that way I have a reference. And if you haven't actually used anything like this before, all the IntelliJ products, so PHP Storm, WebStorm, PyCharm, no, not PyCharm. All those things had this HTTP client built in, and you're actually able to run a request. Done it a handful of times in my streams. We'll use it here. But what I'm going to use it for is actually like a test, so that way we can do some like test-driven development, if you will. So it's actually pre-populating some existing domains. So we're going to do an HTTP get on simplytestme.ddev.site, which is the ddev domain. And I'm just going to straight copy this path and play it. Now we have this URL, and if I press the run button, we'll accept the certificates. Oh, what? simplytest.me/patch. Okay, so we got the URL, and of course we got back a 404 not found, because we haven't defined these routes yet. So this is like a way you could do test-driven development as well. Like, I know I talk about test-driven development quite a bit, where I usually use PHP unit. We could do that in this case, but for now I'm just going to work on it via this method, and then we'll write the test. So let's go back to the SimplyTest repo and actually look at how this was done in 7.x. So just because we're in a new version doesn't mean that we can't take from the old and be, inspired, or however you will. So if you notice, the Drupal 8 the Drupal 9 site mirrored a lot of the modules verbatim. I feel like we could consolidate some of these things over time, but we can worry about that after the fact. The main goal is just getting this done. So let's go to that module. If anybody's watching this isn't actually familiar with Drupal, all of our extensions end in like the extension name. So like there's SimplyTest module, or the SimplyTest launch module ends in .module. Themes would end in .theme, etc. So you can see here, there's project route, used for pre-fill by project short name version functionality. All right. I was assuming there'd be more specific subroutes, but it looks like it's right here. Page arguments is a SimplyTest submission form, so I'm going to copy that, and let's search for it. So project and then version. So if project and if project version. Oh, I thought it automatically started the build. If I click on this, oh, it just pre-fills it. Oh, even better. All right, never mind. Start custom install via URL parameters. All right, cool. I was way over engineering this, and I was thinking that you would like end up on that route and it would automatically like trigger the build. So we can do this. And we will write tests for this actually, because we don't need to worry about, well, we do need to worry about, we need this URL to redirect actually. So let's do that. We want this URL to like redirect in a way that is a like a 301 redirect you would do on a site migration. So let's take a second to look at our routing, that services routing. So this is our home page, I believe. If I do double shift opens this like Finder. If I did system.site.settings, nope, it's this system.site. And we have it inside our Simply Test profile. Yep, the front page is configured. Great. So we need to set up a redirect that brings us to the configure page with those URLs, since we're not using the same query parameters. So let's start there. And you know what? I'm going to do one more thing. We actually set up Cypress testing. I want to work on with test-driven development on this. So we're going to actually launch Cypress right away and do some live development. Sorry, not live development, but test-driven development for this. So Cypress is launching. If you haven't used Cypress before, it's pretty neat. It's, for me, I wasn't super thrilled about it at first because it's like this huge user interface on top of it, but I realized that's actually a really nice thing and has helped out in my other projects for junior developers who are just getting into testing. And like, I love testing, and this has been a way to like bridge that gap and make testing more accessible. So I've had to take off the stubborn hat of all GUIs and say, no, this actually this helps build a bridge and empowers more people to write tests. So see, we have our existing tests here, and those are located in our test directory. No, they're not. They are located in Cypress and called integration. Integration tests. Let's make a new one called, we have launch form. Let's say, let's call it launch form prefill. .js, and actually everything has spec in it, so let's make sure it matches the same name. All right, so it's been a minute since I've wrote one of these. Let's look at what's in here. Do we have it where we're, oh, so install Drupal. So we have it where some tests expect you to have Drupal pre-installed and some will do a fresh install. And I think actually it's just an accident. This launch form spec is missing it because I was testing it so much. I didn't want to worry about it. I didn't want to worry about having to reinstall it constantly and keep running things. So let's do, it's called, you do describe. Actually, so describe. Wait, one of these gave me an autocomplete. Oh, there we go. Autofill of launch form from query parameters. So we get to describe, then we do we don't actually want that before each. So the before each is what runs before each step and basically just resets the page. And we don't want that. So we want it. So this is where it's like kind of like behavior driven development written instead of just pure like unit testing assertions. So it should pre-fill the form from a given, pre-fill the form given user input. So we do cy.visit, and we want to visit this page. And I believe we can then see, we could do like cy dot, or wait. Oh, I've been doing a bunch of stuff in Nightwatch.js as well. So now I'm getting both test frameworks confused. So cy.assert or cy.should. Let's go to Cypress, because now I can't remember how to do the assertions. So one cool thing too about Cypress is it is open source, but it's kind of one of like the open source tool has a paid backing, and the paid backing lets you do their online test runner. So if you come from a company that's used to using like Sauce Labs and Selenium, it's like Cypress is that. Sauce Labs, maintainer Selenium, which became WebDriver. It's this. Like Cypress is really analogous to that. So let's go back to, so let's go to the Cypress docs because I can't remember how to do assertions. Assertions, all. BDD assertions, which is what we're trying to do. Oh, so you write expect. So expect, how do I expect that the response search? Response code. API. I don't want to stub headers. Oh. Cypress check response code for page visited. All right, maybe I should just read the visit. Recommend setting a base URL when using cy.visit. For those who didn't see when we configured all this, we have different .env files we use, which sets up the base URL. So visit, maybe this fails if it is a 404. Arguments, URL to visit. If there's no base URL, options to pass with get, body, headers. Oh, query string. Oh, great. So maybe we could actually, let's do this. US gave me the autocomplete. Let's change this to actually just be, so patch is an array of this. Makes the URL a bit easier to read, and maybe we can set up like some data providers so we can scale this test out more easily. All right. So we can use QS, log, auth, fail on status code. Oh, awesome. So it automatically fails if we get something that's not a 2 or 2xx or 3xx, which 200, anything in the 200 level means okay. Anything in the 300 level means redirect. 400 is client error. 500 is server error. So that's awesome. We already have that. So now, yes, an update's available. You'll see that launch form prefill is already available here. Let's click it and just run it, and we should see that it fails. There we go. 404 not found. And if I click that directly, we'll see that we got the page not found and some duplicated text. So I'm going to stop the runner, and let's get this entry point set up. So I don't want to just do I actually don't want to do a blind redirect to the configure page. I want to do a little bit more. So let's go ahead and create our controller. So we have the launch project. What's this project selector? I think this is an old dead route. This was the original route. Project launcher. So why don't we just project selector. We can worry about names later. So let's call this, let's reuse this path. We'll just say that project selector is going to be our redirector. So project, and to define route paths or route parameters, you use them inside brackets, which in our case, our parameters are the project name and version. So we'll say, we'll call it project, and we'll do version. Defaults, the controller is project selector, and how the routing in Drupal works, and Symfony is the same way. So Drupal's routing system is built on Symfony, and I'm pretty sure every other routing system does the same thing. It uses reflections to say, okay, I know I have these two path parameters. Find the arguments that match, So if we had this as project ID, it would crash. But inside of here, it does string project and it will know how to map to it. I have a blog post on how all this works. Let's see. Yeah, it's all inside of here, this argument resolver. So it finds all the metadata and basically just resolves it and finds out where it gets placed in the arguments, like the order of arguments. So it's pretty neat. If you ever get bored, I recommend throwing an xdebug breakpoint there and working through it so you understand the routing system. So we've got it where we have project and version. And eventually what we want to do is return redirect response, new redirect response. Why didn't this import? Do we already have it? Oh, it's already imported. Right? Okay. Sorry, I'm getting myself distracted. And the URL, so we want it to be the configure URL equals URL from route launch. Nope, not one click command launch configure. There's no route parameters there. There's no options. Actually, there are options. The options would let us define the query parameters. And what we'll end up doing from URI, so options, we can pass in query, fragment, absolute, attributes, and language. We're going to use this query parameter. Because what we're going to do is replay string. And there's actually a secret little trick we need to do here. That I'm debating if I want to fix it now or do a little learning discussion, but I want to just fix it now. So what happens is trusted redirect response subscriber. So in Drupal, if you return a redirect response, there's a subscriber that listens to it, and that's here at redirect subscriber. And what it will do is take the destination and make it an absolute URL. But if it's not a secured redirect response, it tries to make it a local redirect and basically says that if you didn't make it a trusted redirect, so there's this, it's like a security thing for offsite redirects where if you're redirecting to an external URL, you must make it a trusted redirect response. Otherwise, it defaults to a local one, and if it fails, it throws a fatal error. So that way you kind of prevent users from accidentally being redirected off-site. Neat. Found out a lot of headaches with this with Drupal Commerce and like PayPal, which is an off-site payment gateway. My biggest problem with all of this is that this local redirect response implements cacheable secured redirect. So all these things are cacheable, which is annoying. Or not annoying, like actually it is, because a lot of times you may not want redirects to be cached because it's per user or it's like on an instance. Recently I had this with, was it on here even? No, it was a different site where I couldn't get it to stop caching and I tried different tricks. So what I ended up having to do is there is a no cache directive you can apply to a route, which prevents page cache from operating. And actually, I just remembered it. It was a Drupal Commerce site. We're doing redirects, but on all of my Drupal Commerce sites, I never have the page cache module installed, just dynamic page cache. and this causes the page cache module to be bypassed. Because we don't want that. We don't want this redirect to be cached at all. Or we do. In this case, we do, because we're not dealing with per users. So if somebody, we want this to be cached actually. If two users come from the same, like let's say two different users come to this link, we want the first one to do our first pre-processing, but the second one should be okay, and that cache will be invalidated if there's different query parameters. So what we'll do is we're going to improve our cacheability here. And the only reason I know about all of this and all this cache stuff is I've been doing, like, I have been Drupal 8 only for the past 4 or 5 years. And with Drupal Commerce, we broke a lot of things and ran into a lot of brick walls. So it's just time. It's just time and knowledge and pain and suffering with bugs. So local redirect response. We know this is going to be a local redirect response. And we're going to have it be the configure URL. Actually, what we're going to do too is configure URL generated. So you can actually generate the URL to string, and it's here you pass true as a difference, so it's kind of funky. So configure generated get generated URL returns a string, but what we're able to do is say response add cacheable dependency on the generated URL. I don't think there's actually anything that will be returned that's cacheable on the generated URL. If we go here, but it extends bubbleable metadata, which means that the context bubbles up into the main cache. All right, and our next thing we want to do is we have several known query parameters we want to make be part of the page cache cardinality. By default, different query parameters. So actually, let's see. In Drupal, what I found out is if you add a new query parameter, it modifies the cache, but if the value changes, it doesn't actually inspect that. It only inspects if there's new ones, not different values. So in order to do that, we need to say response add. We'll make a new cacheable metadata equals new cacheable metadata. And it's like URL args. Nope. Hold on. I'm going to go to core. I never remember the name of the cache context. So if we go to cache context. All right. So if you want to know what available cache contexts there are in core, you can go to core.services, and they're all prefixed with cache_context. That's it. So we have, based on the IP address, any headers, cookies, session, request format, URL. I think URL path is always added. We can actually end up debugging this path as front query args. Here we go. So we want to add cache context here. So we'll actually look at this. Cache ID context URL.query args to vary by all query arguments. Calculated cache ID to vary by the foo query argument. So in my example, or my history, we've always had to be explicit with the query parameters, but maybe we never actually had to. So I'm going to read through this real quick. Get context query arg if it's equal to null. There has query arg. So the query argument would be anything after this semicolon. So our arguments requested, you normalize query string to minimize variation. So I think that's the one we want to work with. Is we don't want to specify all the individuals. We just want this main one. So we'll start there and we'll test it out. So we have our cache metadata. We're going to do add cache context, and we want to pass in the query args. So that way it always changes based on the provided query parameters. Route, we don't depend on the routing system. Are the active trails, the users, the permissions, the roles, or languages, or theme, or time zone? All right, I think we're good. So I jumped ahead here to fix this because I've been down this road. So this should just do a raw redirect now. Let's go ahead and test this. Or what I would need to do is rebuild the router, because I need to rebuild the routing system because I added these parameters and changed the path. So this isn't doing anything yet. It's not even properly redirecting us. But I just want to make sure that it brings us to the redirect page. And one way we can do that is we have the launch form. And let's see if we have anything with this pick project custom command. That's in support commands. We added pick project. So let's just copy this CY, the Cypress get by label, which is another custom command up here that allows us to find inputs by the label. We did this previously on a live stream where we fix a lot of the accessibility problems, because I don't like when tests say like, oh, just fetch by the ID or CSS classes when it comes to forms. It's like you need to be able to search by label, because that proves in some level you have accessibility, in my opinion. I'm definitely not an accessibility expert. It is a known area that I need to improve upon, but this is at least like the one thing I always stick to. All right. Cache is rebuilt. We added this here. Let's play the test. It's going to take a little bit because it's going to rebuild the cache on us. We got a 302 redirect. Perfect. And that's what we expected. So we expected to hit this. We got 302 redirect. And it didn't give us, we didn't redirect any query parameters. So now let's go ahead and do a little bit more work. You can close the router and the commands. So what this needs to do is we need to move the project name into a query parameter, the version into a query parameter, and pass along any of the query parameters from the initial request. So here's a bit of magic. I didn't specify we wanted the request, correct? Like when I showed you that argument resolver. So let's look at argument resolver for the HTTP kernel. This is all Symfony. So if resolver supports, let's look at all the different argument resolvers. There's request attribute or request value. So this ends up being how we get the request in here. So supports, if request class is the argument type, the argument metadata is based off the reflection. So if there is a request in the argument parameters, it returns the request. What's pretty cool too is if we wanted, request attribute value subscriber yields an argument value from the request attributes. So we could actually fetch something directly from within the request attributes. And if I remember correctly, that's how you could get like the route name, I believe. We could throw on Xdebug and experiment with that, but I want to just push forward more. As I've said, this is some really cool stuff to dive into. All right, so we got the project version, we've got the request, and we're going to attach the request query all. This is the parameter bag, so that should pass forward any of the other query parameters. We might eventually want to split this out and validate some of them, but we're just going to start here. And in the test, let's see, we want to, I want to assert our query parameters. So let's do cy.get is probably going, nope, that's a query onto querying the DOM. That brought us to an example. Query parameters. Path name, what's in here? This is for intercepts, no. Invoke location. Get the global window location object in its current state. All right, so let's do so we would do host port, where's all yields, path name, search. So it would be the search. So let's real quick. We're going to do expect cy.location. I'm holding Command P to toggle this little pop-up. So options would be the key. Where you want it to be expect. Oh, is it .2b configure. So if we save this, expect to be is not a function to equal. Expected. Whoa. That's not what I expected that to return. Okay, here, great. Now there's an example. cy.location should contain there. Invalid child property dot should. Oh, because it's not in expected, it's here. All right. Killing me here. cy.location dot should. Oh. All right, now we should be there. Great, so it should include /configure. Now we want expected. Now we want to test the search. So let's just even type in search, and when we save it, auto reruns. So we can see here that it broke apart. We're going to wonder if there's a way that we could parse it. Location search should contain, we'll say project equals Drupal version equals 9.3.x. So those passed. And I wish JavaScript had a way to like break apart query strings more easily. So I'm just going to copy that, or well, should contain that ran. So it only did patch as one value, because that's how it came through. Or actually, let's see. What's this initial URL that it visited? printed output to your console. So you have to open this, visit original URL project. So it itself did not make it a path or an array. I wonder if that's because there's only one value, so it automatically made it a single item. That's fine. Just need to change this, and or the easier way, sorry, is to just go here, plus sign, encode URI component. There we go. Now that should all pass. Expected to include oh, it's not fully, it only URI encoded the all right, let's copy this. That reload, and I'm just going to copy %3a. So it only encoded the colon for some reason. All right, there, I'll take it. Is it because the original was encoded that way? Original URL, no, the entire thing was encoded, but when it redirected, it didn't. Okay, we'll just deal. So I have a few things that I want to go through before we move forward. So we have the configure URL. And if we're hitting this page, we should do some pre-flight checks. I'm going to stop the test runner real quick. And that's exactly what happens in get.tree7. There we go. So inside simply test launch, it does that as well. Submission page form. So it gets all the available versions and verifies that the version is valid. So we should do some of the same things. What do we have in? We don't have anything really injected here. Project fetcher. Fetch project. That is a legacy command, I believe. Fetch versions. Select from projects. Fetch version projects. See. I want to just validate that we have it. Where does the autocomplete run? That's the problem. Like the code's kind of in various places. So projects, source, controller, simply test projects, autocomplete projects. Oh, simply test project fetcher, search from projects. I guess that is what we want. So let's do this. Simple test. Fetch project. Project. Project short name. But why are we searching the Drupal.org API first and then trying to create the project and not... Hold on. Search from projects. There we go. I had the wrong thing going on. Search from projects. So we find it there. We're going to replicate some of this code, I guess. So we will search from projects, project. Why is this throwing? Oh, because it's looking for string. So what we want is there should probably only be one match, or we'll always just want to take the first match in this case. But I don't think I actually want to search from projects because we're going to be searching on the short name. And I don't know why we do a direct query here instead of an entity query, but that's how it goes. So do we have the database in here? No, we don't. Cheat. All right, so I'm going to back up a bit and ddev describe. I'm doing ddev describe so I can copy the Docker port for the database connection and update it here. So that way I can just browse the database inside PHP Storm. So we look at project. So if we look at project, you'll see we have the short name, which is the machine name. So we just want to query off of these things here instead of doing a full search. So project selector, let's do a see, projects are entities, so I feel like we should do a entity query instead of a direct database query. I wouldn't say it's anything more performant or less performant, but we don't need, I guess we don't need the full entity. So we want to just see if, we just want to make sure it exists. My idea here is that we receive a project name. Let's make sure it's imported into simply test me before we redirect. So let's just see if it exists. So we're going to say database equals backtick Drupal database and to do inject the database service. All right. So we're going to say, let's go copy the query. Or maybe not even copy the query. Let's go and move it, split down. So count would be database select from simply test project with an alias of p. We're going to make it a count query. Condition, we want short name to equal the project name. And we're going to do execute, and then I believe it's just doing fetch field. And I always double check this. I find the count query and then I do shift command F to just search through and count query execute. Fetch field. Yep. Okay. So fetch field is how we get the final value. So if count is equal to 0, we want to prefetch it. If it's greater than 1, it shouldn't be, but we will just let it live as is. So if count is equal to 0, this is when we want to do this. We want to fetch the project to make sure it's imported, and we'll run some tests on this. There's that. So when we do fetch project, it goes and gets it from the Drupal.org API, does a few things, gets the project type, the URL, saves it, and I believe we have a listener on project save to fetch its versions. We'll find out in projects. On insert, yep. Okay, so on project insert, we get the version manager and update its data. Get release. So here we go. We'll run this too. So now we need to get the project version manager in here. Change this to do update services. So project version manager equals Drupal get. So I do get container get over service because the Symfony plugin does better auto completion. So get, and we do project version manager. So if the count isn't 0, we want to check that the version, oh, I guess we always want to check that the version exists, but it feels kind of silly because we know we just fetched the versions here. So we do want to have 2 different conditions. Because we know we already downloaded them here. So if it doesn't exist, to do handle checking version. I'm going to pop right back up to this. So if we know we have a count, let's do project version manager get release. So release is there. So the project and then the version. And what we should do is I'm going to actually split this query out into up here. And we'll call it here. So if release is equal to null, because that is what is allowed when I hold down command and hover over, it shows me that it returns an array or null. I want to unset the version from the query parameter. And one thing too, if you're curious, there's this extension called Deep Association plugin for PHP Storm, and that's what gives me all these options. It can actually read that up here we did project and version, and then shows it down here in a drop down. So if we were given an invalid version, I want to remove it from the query string. There, or so if it's null, maybe we need to actually, instead of doing that, we probably need to do project version manager update data for the project. And some of this might be a bit intensive to process on a redirect, but we want to make sure that we're up to date, and hopefully it's pretty quick. So we'll then we'll update the data and then we'll run it again. And this feels awkward. Like, to me, this means that we are needing like some kind of other helper method here that says like get release, but on a miss, update data and check again. But I'm going to just avoid over engineering right now and just let it be and try to get this to be not yellow at me. So it's going to yell that, yeah, it's running PHPCS, but at least now it's not yelling at me down here. So yeah, so we said if there's a project, get the release. If there's no release found, fetch all the recent release data, check if the release now exists. If it doesn't, remove it from the query parameter because we were given an invalid value. We can say to do display a message letting them know invalid version question mark. We could, but I don't know, like some of these things, like I don't know if it's worth like bubbling up. Probably it might be, but I'm not sure how we would do it, so I'm gonna leave it as a to do. And now I want to pop back up here because we actually need to do the same. We need to do the same logic here, but not fully. So we know that fetching the project, we'll make a note when a project is inserted, the release history is automatically fetched. So I'm going to paste this code here and go to projects.module, and I'm going to copy this name and say see here. So I'm just saying it, but it's like, well, how do you know that's happening? Look at the hook insert and you'll see that it's running, which actually we could put this in like storage handler instead of in a hook that we own for an entity we own, but that's fine. So fetch project, array, or bool. I feel like it doesn't return an array. Oh, it does. It returns the... Why would it return this array of data and not the project? Let's... Where is this called from? Oh, because it's called here and it's using that response. All right. So what we should do is check if it doesn't return null. Oh, it returns a boolean. So it returns false if anything fails. So we should do that. We should add a check there first. Fetched project equals this. So if fetch project is equal to false, how do we handle an invalid project? I'm not sure the best way to handle that. Otherwise, if we did successfully import the project, let's make sure the release is valid. Let's see. And this I think could be like on project insert without typos. Make that a little bit simpler of a sentence. Fix that typo and add simply test to dictionary. So if false. All right, so we have some logic here that kind of protects us from bad values. And let's rerun the tests. $500 error. Column not found in short name from simply test project, because I bet it's no. What did I do? Simply test project, condition, field short name. Column not found from simply test project where short name. And why is it doing it as select one as oh, because it's doing a count. What? Oh, really? Because I put count query before the condition? Oh, well then, that's something I didn't know before. Is you need to make sure you put your conditions before you declare a count query, or at least the object returned from count query doesn't allow you to do conditions on it properly. Return value of get release must be of type array or null. Bool returned. Well, we have some type data. Well, that's just finding a new bug where it's supposed to be an array or null, and instead we've got a boolean returned. So fetch associate. Oh, return false if there's no next row. So if it's an empty value, it returns false. We want it to return null instead. Null is always null. Let's change this. So we're gonna say result equals this. So return result If result is equal to false, return null, otherwise return result. Is it still going to yell at me about this? Is always null. And that's purely because this has a bad document block of instead of saying array or null. So I'm going to undo. Or wait, sorry, it's array or bool. So that fixes that there. I wonder, this bothers me. So if I refresh this, it redirected me. Okay. Project Drupal version was excluded. Adam, I believe you reported this where the 9.3.x branch was not importing. So let's look at simply test core versions. 9.2.x dev. Let's run ddev drush cron. That should fetch them all, and we'll see what happens. I just want to see if somebody has something on here. This is a bit frivolous, but it was annoying that it was not there. So fix, fetch, assoc, return type, and document block. I'm going to call it a bug report because it is a bug. And we'll say it's in the database system. The return type for fetch. So I cannot type this. Oh, content error, previews. Well, that's on purging that. Simply test cron project took 21 seconds. Okay, we have the 9.3.x. If it's not in the beta, I wonder if cron's not working properly. I'm going to copy the reference. It's empty. So IDEs and static analyzers assume it is null or void. This is problematic. If you want to check for false to return null, this code returns static analysis errors that it always evaluates to null. So if I undo this, oh, shortcuts click too many things. So if I do that, and if I hover over this, I take a screenshot. I can then attach the screenshot so they understand what I'm talking about. So let's close the screenshot, upload it, embed it. Specify the return type is array or bool so that things are analyzed correctly. So I know sometimes people think that like documentation fixes might not be huge, but like things like this are huge because my static analysis tool was saying that it wasn't going to work. Like this is not valid. So I'm creating an issue fork so I can make the change. And that means I can get back to writing our test though. So refocus. So if I click reload, oh, interesting. So the version was skipped, even though we now have it. Let's see. If I rebuild the caches, I wonder if we have some caching problems there. Open the merge request. All right, wait for the caches to rebuild. Sorry, I'm going to bounce around and multitask quite a bit here. So Drupal core database. So core, lib, Drupal core. Database. Statement interface. I'm going to feel real silly if somebody... I forgot I'm not on 3.x. Okay, it's still broken. So cache rebuild complete. Let's rerun this Cypress test. I'm sorry if this is a lot with me bouncing around, but this is just how my brain operates. I always try to like maximize my time. So there we go. Add return type. I don't want to start a new merge request. I want the auto-generated. I want the existing one to work. So I'm going to close that, refresh, and check here. So it's still missing the version. All right. So let's refresh this. Queuing. All right. Oh, cool. And there's going to be the live preview, which is unnecessary with Tugboat because it's just a document fix. All right. So we have a bug and we need to fix the bug. So for some reason, the version is being unset. And we don't even have caching in here, actually. So why? Oh, because we're doing the project version manager instead of the core version manager here. We do update data for each there, get project, process, database merge. Let's see if we actually have core versions duplicated in here. Let's do short name equals core. Drupal 9.3.x dev. It's in here. So we're going to put on xdebug. Let's do ddev xdebug, and we're going to step through and see what's going on. Let's click on yes, we're missing it. Let's click on this link again. And it's cached, so that's why it's not running or not hitting for us. Or at least I don't think so. So let's drop a breakpoint there and try it again. Yeah, I bet if we were to stop. I don't want that. Let's see. Original URL. And this is what I want to copy. So if we go to, what was that? Scratch 22? Yeah. We're going to paste that and we're going to run it. So release was null for project Drupal 9.3.x. Short name is there. We did update data, and release was again null. So I'm going to rerun it, and we're going to step through this part. I'm going to stop Cypress as well. So let's step in. So query. So Drupal 3.3.x. Step in. Args. So I want to just even run this query myself here. And version equal to 9.3. If I could type. Oh. All right. Because it gets saved. Oh. All right. We need to search by the tag, not the release. The release name or the version name. So I wonder if we actually have like a little secret bug going on here for all of anything that's in beta. Is if you notice the version name matches the tag name on everything but dev releases. Which in Drupal is like kind of common for the release name to always match the tag. So I wonder if we need to, we already have a bunch of testing in place for this. Well, obviously not good enough. So here's what we'll do. We're going to stop all, and this get release should probably check. I don't know the best way to check the last. Let's do it. PHP check last character on a string. Substring. Oh yeah, substring -1. All right. So we'll do if substring version offset -1 is equal to x, because anything that's a dev release always ends in .x in Drupal land. So we want version, we're going to append -dev. So let's drop a breakpoint here. And if I can, let's look at our test source unit test. No. Kernel test, project version insert, updated test versions exist. We don't have tests for this yet. That's that to do lives. So we're just going to manually test this again. So let's run the request. 9.x3 dev. We have release data now. So Adam, I think this might be the bug that was being experienced where things were passing through correctly. All right, let's get to our data here. We get a 200 response. Let's look at services. So 200 okay. Oh, you know what? That's kind of a bummer. It did not capture the redirect in between. I wonder if there's a way to examples, get requests with a header, with a parameter, no redirect. Okay, let's try that. So I want to test this without the redirect. Okay, HTTP 302 found. And what I wanted to look at it for is the cache context, which I'm kind of concerned about the fact that we got a 302 found. It says the cache tags are only HTTP response and the cache contexts are empty. Cache control must revalidate. No cache private. Let's see. I want to make sure I have some testing stuff turned off. I'm going to turn Xdebug off quickly. And let's go to sites, default, settings, local. I have all my cache bins turned off. So let's let that back on and do ddev. We're going to do a drush cr. I'm going to refresh this issue real quick. So it's running, and put it to needs review. And save. And close that. All right, so we did a cache rebuild. So now my cache bins are actually going to be running. And let's run this again. So found. Maybe page cache doesn't actually run on this. So expires in. No response. Maybe it just leverages the browser cache, but I was having some serious issues before with this. And I'm just concerned we're not seeing. This is why we're not seeing it. Man, response, add cacheable dependency, cacheable metadata. So now if I run it, now we see the cache context. Great. One thing I want to do too is we have some cache tags that we implement. They're a bit magical in the project version manager. Let's see here. Update data. Oh, we don't have the cache tags. What about in the project fetcher? I'm going to make a to do. We need project specific cache tags that can be invalidated. But we'll just keep this as is for now. I don't even know if that's necessarily needed on the redirect. So I don't think it is. So let me just go back and remove that to do. Oh, we can clean up. That's not needed. Yeah. All right, cool. So we have that going on. Let's rerun Cypress now. Which didn't, oh, Cypress open. And we'll run it. Now this version should work. And I don't think in Cypress you can do a, like, I try to look at like a data provider type thing where you can say, based on this given data, run a bunch of things. Project autocomplete spec. Yeah, you have to do it this way where you just define a constant and then inside of a test you do for each. So maybe I'll do that. So prefill. All right, so we've got all the things in our URL. Now, the hard part begins where we need to actually do it inside the React code. So we'll move on to there. One thing I did not do yet, though, is create an issue fork and check out the issue fork. So let's do the commands. I'm going to copy the get, add, and fetch. Where am I? Okay. Web, profiles, contrib, simply test me. Oh, simply test me. run the commands to add the remote, fetch the branches, and check out that branch. So what we can do first is we can just, I'm going to make a commit of the code as is right now. So project version manager handles that fix. So actually I want to make one commit. So we could cherry pick this if we wanted to, like ahead of time. Fix testing, fix loading versions for dev releases. Because that would be a good candidate for a cherry pick into the main branch to fix bugs. But we'll probably just fix the whole kit caboodle. And now in here, we're just adding add param, add BC redirect for prefill. So commit and push. We're going to push that feature branch. Now we got to figure out how to have the context of the form pre-filled from these query parameters. So the React app is in the theme, which I would love to move it out of the theme. So we have this context, and this is used throughout the app to know how to build the main form. Oh, prettier when you're running. So what we would almost need to do is have a use effect in this context that runs on mount and reads the query parameters. So that's where I'm going to start. So the idea is that we have a side effect that only runs on mount, because anytime I guess it could be, no, it's not a single page app, so we don't have to worry about the route changing. But let's do a quick React side effect on query parameter changes. No, update query parameter. How do you programmatically? What is side effect? React use effect. All right, well, I already know how this works, so I don't need to go through it, but what we'll want to do is constant search equals window.location. So we're going to destruct out search from the location, and we'll do a console.log search. And let's open the npm package.json, and we're going to do launch, or watch rather. So the watch is going to let us do like live reloading and proxy to the ddev environment. It's probably going to open my Chrome. So I'll have to kill that and then open it in my Brave browser. And thanks everybody for hanging out on this stream on Sunday. Hope you've had a good weekend so far. I know mine's been, because I've finally been able to get my pool starting to open. Which, yeah, pools are they're a blast of a money pit. But we bought a house that had an in-ground pool, and I was like, well, let's enjoy it, and the kids love it, so I guess it's worth it in the long run. All right, we've got this running. Let's copy. Where did that redirect go? Scratch 22. Actually, I just need the, or yeah, let me copy this as a whole. And copy this part. All right, so we've got our redirect query parameters here, and JavaScript parse URL search. I never know how to do it. Parse URL search params. Oh, okay. So maybe we can use this. I know previously I would use like the QS library, and I don't think we have that as a dependency here. Everything's post CSS, prop types, style lint. That gulp, gulp, gulp. Yeah. So we use this entries for each, get all. Let's try this out. So let's do so we're gonna go to app launcher context. Let's do foo equals new URL search params. Search. And let's do a foo dot get all. We'll save. We see that Webpack is rebuilding. So has.toString delete gotchas does not parse full URLs. It will strip off a leading query parameter. So this should have refreshed for me. Failed to execute get all. One argument required, but only zero. But what? Only zero present. Oh. Sorry. So get all. Oh, entries. Append. So get all returns all values for a given search parameter. So we want actually values in here. So get all would be good for patches. So like if patches was a value array, we want to run it there. Wrong page. So iterator. I don't want an iterator. Entries returns an iterator for each. Get returns the first value. Keys set sort to string values. Well, if it's let's see, iterator. There's got to be a make to take an iterator and turn it into an array. Built-in iterables array from. There we go. So let's moved it to the wrong area. Let's do array.from. Let's see what we get back. Okay, not exactly what we want. So here's what we can do. I have an idea. So we have all these various things here. Selected project, selected version. So selected project is a fully built out is a JSON object where we need to figure out the type. So I think we need to add more query parameters possibly, which means that I should change the way that we load or that we pass in all the query parameters. I wonder, does JavaScript... Actually, I'm on the developer thing here, so let's do Base64. Can you do Base64 encoding? There are two functions. decodes, but I feel like there might be bugs. I thought there was. Maybe there's not. Maybe I'm just imagining things. So my one idea is that we could just, instead of passing over raw JSON in the URL, we could actually just base64 encode the string and then decode it and have like the JavaScript array basically for the launch context. Because we need to know the short name. We'll try some basics of it. So search params equals this. We'll just walk through it slowly, and then I'll begin to over-engineer it at the end. So if search params that has project. So if it has project, we're going to set selected project, set selected project to search params dot get project. And I bet this will cause some errors, because even though it's not defined anywhere, the selected project is actually an object that has a short name. Oh, here we go. We can do set main project. Here we go. So if, let's do this, like if search param has project and search params that has version, we're going to call set main project, and due to like hoisting or whatever there is in JavaScript, like we can call the function ahead of this. So we'll say short name is search params dot get project, and the version is search params dot get version. We can do else if search params dot has project. So if we had project and search or and version, we do that. Otherwise, we just do this. Say short name. Let's reload. So if I look at our components and we look at the provider value, selected project short name is Drupal, patches is there. So like we're setting it, but it's not, it's kind of broken. So we've got the right selected version, install profile standard. It was used before it was defined. Yeah. So I feel like we need to pass in the full object it's expecting, which gets set in, where do we set that? Components, project autocomplete. So we get the values back from that search and we set the values there. And once one is picked, where do we set that? Use combo box on input value change, set input items. Those are the input items. Use state set selected item. Oh, on change set selected item, which the selected item would be. So if I type in Drupal core here, we'll see that the selected project says sandbox 0 short name, title, and type. So we need to provide that in our redirect as well in order for this to work. What I want to see is what happens if I I want to just quick hack this in. So short name, title is Drupal. Short name, title, type is Drupal core, and what was it? Sandbox was 0. Oh, too late. Let's manually refresh this. So there's a selected project. Now we have this here, selected version. Why isn't the Drupal core version updating? But the one problem I can see is this isn't pre-populated. So project autocomplete needs to handle a default value, which it should. Project autocomplete selected item. It has no idea. Oh man, it has no idea on what's the default value. On input change. So this use combo box. Let's see. Use combo box props. Selected item. Initial is open. It's an item instance. Default selected item. Initial selected item. I'm going to quick read the README on the best way to README. So we're using the downshift combo box. And on change, initial input value. Maybe that's what we need, is initial input value. It's so initial selected item, pass an item, an array of items that should be selected when it's initialized. The initial input value when downshift is initialized. So maybe that's what we need here, which means that now we need to make this aware of our context provider. Now this is even more stateful, which I wanted to try to avoid. So project selection. This is where we set the selected project. So project here. All right. We use this in various places. Additional button. So I guess we need to have it as default initial, default project. So initial default project. We're actually, this is just such a mess. Is something we want to pass down into here. Or actually, we want it to be the default value for the state. Set selected item. Initial default input. Default. We'll just say initial project equals project. So we need to add initial project here. And initial input value is initial project dot short name. We'll try that. I have no idea if this is going to work. Let's refresh. Error. All right. I cannot read property short name of undefined in project autocomplete 19. Initial project. Oh, so we need to say if that, otherwise empty. Right, we didn't even get value. So we have a selected project. The initial input let's dig into this project. Autocomplete, undefined, undefined. Okay. This is just going, oh, project selection. On change. That's for the additional projects. Project selection. All right. So we want the use launcher. We want to get the main project name. Selected project. All right. So inside project selection, on change, an initial default project is selected project. This React app needs a serious refactoring. Initial project is null. Initial default project. All right, so we've got initial default project is this value. That's in project selection. Initial default project. We set that to be the state is null there. So maybe that's the problem, is this should always be, oh, because I don't have an effect on it. So maybe I need use effect, and the dependency is on initial default project, and we're going to do set project that. I feel like we need to also then pass in the default version, and this thing is just such a monstrosity. Why why is there no text shown? The good news is it defaulted and it showed it's got a value, it's just not rendering. Oh geez. So now we need initial default version. And we're gonna have the same side effects here where we're gonna do set version. And now we gotta find ways to bubble it all down again. So project selection. So version selector, we get initial version equals version. Or I guess why am I overcomplicating it this way? Because now it's just going to cause it to constantly re-render. There. Delete this effect. I think that will do the same work. Let's see. It did not. All right, so we got initial default project. Initial project. Oops, sorry, I hit the microphone. That should cause this to re-render though if the initial project changes. on input value change, selected item, well, all right. This managed to get it to re-render properly. So we've got the version, but the value's not setting there. So project selection is in here. So on change, that's in here. Initial default project. We need to do initial default version equals selected version, which we need to import from the context. Let's see if that works. But it probably runs after the fact that the versions have been fetched. Initial version 7.0. Oh, I wonder if it gets overridden somewhere. We have, let's see. So version selector, set versions, selected version is root so we get the root project version. Side effect, set selected version. Okay, so versions.length. So what we need to do is cry a lot because this thing really needs the major refactoring. So initial version, so version set selected version there. So version's length is greater than 0. So I'm going to say if there's no initial version, all right, so initial version is 9.3.x, selected version is there, but obviously this value is wrong. So value equals selected version on change. Why is the selected version not updating? So use effect set. There's probably like so many conflicting re-renders happening. And that's why. So we set the version to this initial default version here. So if we look at project selection, we see that the state is 9.3.x. Selected versions here, but this didn't get the memo. Oh, because of the whole .dev thing. All right. That's going to be a bigger problem throughout the project than I thought. So let's fix that here. -dev. All right, so it is auto-completing there. And let's look at this core version selector, state that, and the context provider value set Drupal version. Drupal version is 9.3.x dev. Can launch is true. So in our redirect, where is it? Launch source controller. It was in projects. In projects, controller Simply test projects. This was not it. Routing. Okay, so it was here. So what we need to do is where do we, oh, it was, so we have it under git release as a fix, but we need to just do it here too. So we'll test that, and then the Cypress test will probably fail. But now we need to figure out why this isn't rendering the text. Initial autocomplete, Drupal core. Let's go back to, I'm going to close a lot of this out. So I'm running about out of time. So I spend about 2 hours for this, and then I get back to, normal family chores. So what happens when we just provide the short name and no title? So everything is working. Like the launcher. Like everything is being populated, but as options. So it shows the umami demo even, but this isn't displaying the project name. So downshift combo box default value. It's 2019. How do I set the initial value? Have you tried using the initial selected item? I've tried default selected item as downshift prop item to string. Default. Can you please read our documentation as well as there? Well, I tried reading it too and it didn't make sense. Try it again. Initial selected item blue. All right, let's try that, because in the TypeScript it says item needs to be like an item object, but maybe it doesn't. So let's do initial default. Initial selected item is a value. Advanced props. Initial input, initial selected item. Pass an item that should be selected when downshift is initialized. Default is open. What about this default selected item? It's not in their docs, but supposedly it's there. Like, it's right here. Why is there no, like, how can you say there's not when it's default input value? Maybe that's what I need. Default input value. It's still not it. Item.toString. Object you're passing generate your status messages have the following error. No. The value the input should have. Items, item toString is item.title. So do I need to change this to be null and have it be that? Reload the page and see. That doesn't do it either. All right, this might be initial project. We got the short name, and I wish it would let me see into the rendered by hooks state combo box. All right, I'm gonna look at the combo box hooks, controlled reducer, the memo, and a bunch of callbacks. Okay. And now it's fine. I'm not sure why. So title, short name type. I've tried to. I'm not going to comment on something that's over 2 years old. The currently selected item, the ID, input ID, environment, outer click. All right, maybe there's better docs that are outside of the README. Components, hooks, use combo box. Use the style of the selected item. Basic usage. On input value change. Yep, that's great and all, but we want to custom window, multiple selection, other usages, examples repository. Multiple experiences. See the open the file in the examples directory. Let's see an examples directory. Downshift. Other examples. Using actions. Input value select. That's not it. Prevent reset on blur. Nope. I don't want to use Apollo GraphQL. Higher order components. It's not. Gmail. Maybe there's something in here. Components. Compose mail. Oh, this is not. Select by key. That didn't help. Well, I gotta end the stream so I can go do some chores. Looks like I'm blocked on figuring out how to provide default values into Downshift.js, which is used for the accessible dropdown. And I really want to know. Default is open. Initial select initial input value. Like where is this used? Constructor, this props. Item to string. So so if selected item is not equal to null, this item input value, like, so that should be it. Default input value, initial input value should just be the short name, and that should work, but for some reason it's not. Oh shoot. Is it because I get input props? Maybe I broke it myself by overriding the input, and I'll have to take back all the frustration because it was my own doing. Get input props on blur on change input value. All right. So input value, input props equals that. The rest is preact else on change. Input value from this get state. If it's not disabled, on change, this input on input, on blur, return. All right. Value is input value. Name text, get input props. Use combo box, get input props options. The value is input value. This gets state. This props. I don't know. It's too much to try to figure out. I just want to see. So inspect. So the value is empty. Use combo box. This hook. Combo box. Element IDs. Last reference. Scroll into view. Memoization. Callback. We're passing in. I can't even see the element IDs. No. Latest reference is open input value. Props, item to string. All right, here we go. Items is empty. Initial input value is there. So why isn't it setting it to the input value? All right, so I was able to make a breakthrough on that. And initial input value, string. This props. If selected item is not equal to null and input item is undefined, I feel like I don't understand this. This destructuring is making me confused. But here's what we could do. If state, where is state? This gets state input value selected item. because it comes from the props. So to do review this. All right. I thought I got a hold of it, but I didn't. So I'm gonna put it there. And thanks for tuning in. And we've almost got it set, but this React library is kicking my butt. So hopefully I'll be able to pick it up next time. And thanks for tuning in. Bye.